When we come into a new space, a new place, where a new place here could be, when we join a family, when we come to a new workplace, when we move into a new neighborhood and so on, we always find some routines that are already running, some way of life of that place that is already running, and therefore we kind of join in from where we found it, and either just get to maintain the routine and the way things have been running there, get to kind of develop our own ways of running our lives and living there, or just totally maybe start our own way of how to do things, of how to manage our times and to do what task at what time and so on. What I'm trying to say here is we always have found some running patterns of life, and some of them might be very good, might be working, others might not, or really others might have room to be made better. Now, instead of just being there and really complaining and lamenting on how some things don't work, on how something has been there for a long time and it has been the same throughout, how about we make them better? Or when really needed, how about we completely do away with the existing pattern and just create or come up with a new one? Whether or not it's easy, whether or not it's a one time, or whether or not it's a journey that we have to walk and it's a process that will take a time, or that will take a while. Hello everybody, and welcome to Naomi's All Inclusive World. Karibu sana for my first timers, and for you who is coming back, asante sana. Let's keep doing this. And in today's episode, I would love us to look at something to do with patterns, and really when it calls for us to break these so-called patterns and probably come up with new ones. Karibu. Now, a pattern in the simplest of language really is just is like the formula of doing something, where the formula here includes the time within which you get to do something, or you get to watch something run or perform, and probably the intervals at which it happens, and so it's actually just like a frame within which something gets to run from the beginning, from its beginning to probably when it stops, or when it pauses, or when a first cycle ends, and something like that. Now, you must have heard things like, that's just their pattern of doing something, that's just the pattern of, that's how that family does their thing. They have a certain pattern of things. They have a certain way of, doing their life, running their life and so on. And so is the case in the different spaces. We have patterns of doing life in a workplace, in a corporate world, in a juakali space. We have a pattern of how things are done in a medical space. We have a pattern of how things are done in the open air market, when it comes to the open air markets, especially from my country. In Kenya, where we have so many open air markets, talk of kina Mudhurwa, kina Gikomba, kina Mutindwa, what others, nikumbushe zingine, the 64, laini moja, and so on. So there's a pattern of how things run there, and this pattern might include, even we have certain days that market doesn't run. We have certain days where the market runs, where certain items are sold. Like from my little hometown Matunda in Kakamega County, I have known it all my life, really, or rather since I started knowing like Saturday is a market day, that actually it's only on Saturday that you get to we get to have an open animal market, you know, mnada wa wanyama. So if you want to say to buy or sell your cow, your sheep, your goat, your donkey, you know, and so on, the day for doing that, and whether it's, we're talking about one piece, one cow here or several cows and so on, and whether it's, you know, either way, either you want to sell the ones you have, or you want to buy, the day has to be on a Saturday. That's just the pattern. Like you cannot, hakuna mnada on a Monday, matunda. Hakuna mnada on a Friday. Mnada wa wanyama, soko ya wanyama, is only on Saturday. Now that doesn't necessarily have to be the same case in Mosbridge. That doesn't have to be the same case in Gilgil or in wherever, in Limuru. Every space, every place has its own pattern, has its own routine of how it does things. Now, whether or not that pattern works is up to those involved in it to say. Now, when we come back now to real life, to human life, to the daily running of our lives, we have different patterns of how we do things. You know, in a certain household, you'll find kwamba the pattern here in the morning is that you wake up in the morning, before you say ABCD, like you drink water. You know, I remember we growing up at some age, mom had a certain pattern, you know, in the village, and oh God, I did not like part of it. But looking back, she meant well. You would wake up in the morning and you drink water whether or not you're thirsty. You know, she'll have you drink water, and she'll also drink water herself. And especially for her, she was walking a healing journey. She had just, you know, come from a terrible, you know, sickness and so on. And she really like water therapy was a must part of her you know, her healing, her recovery journey. So she just made it like a family thing, and we all had to take water. I dreaded the mornings, because it's like, you know, water is not something sweet, that then it's the first thing in the morning before toilet kunywe uji ama strong tea if there was sugar, anyway, and so on. And it just kind of became a pattern until up to now. It's just like one of those things that I do. You know, I don't even have to think about it. I'll go like, God, it's just like when I wake up, my system is thinking of some water down my throat, and so on. You know, we have patterns of just knowing that, say for example, like after dinner in the evening, after you've done the dishes and so on, as a family, maybe you sit down and you have like a family, you know, maybe reading of the word if you're a religious family, and then, you know, you get to pray together, get to have a recap of how your day was. You know, if it's kids, how was school, and then how was this, if, you know, and something like that. It's just a pattern that has come up and it works. Now that might only be working for your household, and therefore if you try to move it to a different one, it may not work, or it may not work as smoothly and as seamlessly as in the other household. Patterns are very specific. Patterns are very space specific, unit specific. And that's a very good thing that we need to keep in mind, that what works for me doesn't necessarily have to work for you word for word or in that very order. Sometimes rearranging it might help, or sometimes just how about just create your own pattern that works for you, so that then you are part of creating it, and therefore you're just not coming into one that is already existing. You know, you create it and then now you live it. You unaishi from day to day. You live in it, you practice it, you live it, you know, and so on. Now, that being said, not all patterns are good. Some patterns are healthy, some patterns are positive, some patterns are useful, others are not. Like I mentioned earlier on, a pattern such as, you know, frequent hydration. It's very good, it's very healthy, and especially when you get to do it as a whole unit, when you get to do it as a whole family, if you are a family person. A pattern such as meditation, is very good, where you intentionally take time to just take it all in, maybe in silence, maybe in contemplation sort of a bit, but you are very intentional with it. It's not like you are between tasks, or you are running a chore, then you kind of freeze, or like you take a moment. And no, we're not talking about such a thing. We're talking about intentional setting aside of time, whether it's 30 minutes, whether it's 20 minutes, an hour, depending again with your schedule, with your lifestyle, with your routine, and just being quiet and being in the moment. They say we hear more when we are still, when we are all here, and not trying to be here and trying to watch the food on the oven, and then also trying to make sure like the washing machine is running, and trying to make sure so that the kid, no. Like just taking a while time and just literally hearing your system, like hearing or listening to your heartbeat, and just taking in the goodness around you. So meditation can also be a good pattern, something like that, just a pattern of scheduled grooming, something like that, whereby like especially when you run, say, a Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday type of a job, even taking a shower just becomes another routine. You jump into the shower, you are out, you oil yourself, you hair up, do ABCD, and you're out. And therefore you realize, for such a routine, like when you have, say, a day off, or a weekend where you're not going in and so on, like you kind of develop like a pattern of now, taking time to groom yourself, because with the rush in the morning and so on, you might not probably have time to say, wax your feet, wax your armpits, scrub your feet, do your eyebrows, maybe what is it called? Like just deep clean your ears nicely, and just all that. So that then whenever you get a chance, you create a certain pattern where now you take time to do that deep cleaning, that grooming, that personalized grooming, and so on. So that also is a good pattern. Now, some patterns can also be unhealthy. Some patterns can also be negative and therefore draining. And such are the ones I want us to emphasize on, and just look at what we can do to either minimize the time we give such, or completely get away with them. We have patterns like, for example, of mediocrity. You just realize in a certain family, people are very comfortable with mediocrity. Watu wametosheka tu na ukawaida. Yani ukawaida tu ni there's never an endeavor to better things, to add more effort. It's like it's just the minimum basic effort we can put in something is good enough. Anything more than that is almost painful, and therefore uncomfortable, and therefore better off if avoided. Take an example of even just, you realize that when you hear kwamba you're going to someone's house, you just go like, oh my goodness, how long is that meeting gonna be? Because their food is just so mediocre. It's like, who said food ugali spinach matumbo has to just be cooked the same way ever? How about you try other things? How about you try other methods? How about you actually try that spinach and matumbo with something else? Si lazima iwe na sima jamani, ama si lazima iwe na wali wakati wote, ama si lazima iwe na spaghetti. Like you're just so mediocre in what you do. You're just so basic. You don't want to try other things and other avenues, which then just makes it so boring and not enticing. So mediocrity can be one of those negative or unhealthy patterns that we need to look at. Wakati tabia zako ni za kufanya tu kitu kwa uchache kabisa, kama sasa tuseme kwa mfano kama ni upishi, nilivyosema upishi, bora tu you've boiled the sweet potatoes ama nduma, ushaziboil pale na chai, ndio hivyo imetosha. Siku moja jamani, jaribu hata kuweka spices kwenye hiyo chai. Try putting in some cinnamon in the tea. One of these days, put in some good ginger, ground ginger or fresh ginger. Try putting in some mint. Like just try different ways of making the same thing, and you'll be so amazed. It will be the same food, but differently, tasting and just also, looking good. Also, just something like even serving the food. Who said the food has to be served the same way? Garnish your food one of these days. Just serve it on a different plate. It doesn't just have to be that plate that looks so sad and is always on the table, and it's always, like you're just so mediocre. Yani uko tu wewe ni mtu uko na ukawaida kabisa, mpaka there's no space for any adventure, for any trying of different things and so on. You also become boring when you live in mediocrity. So yeah, that can also be draining. And for anyone here, whether you're a wife, whether you're a husband, you are a sibling, you are a young lady, young man there, mediocrity can be draining. You want to try different avenues of doing the same thing, but spicing it up. Okay. Another pattern that can be draining if we are not very careful is just of let me see what good word to use so that I also just stay respectful. Like a pattern of just vices, patterns of vices, like pattern of laziness, a pattern of just laziness in the sense of yani umetosheka tu na hayo masomo. When you think of trying to get that extra certificate, that extra paper in a different field, you feel like it's just so painful. Unataka tu, you just want to stay on the same lane. Hautaki kubadilisha jamani, hutaki kupiga kona, you don't want to, because kubadilisha, changing lanes, changing direction, changing this also just comes at a cost where you have to be intentionally there. It might involve more time, it might involve actually even money, it might involve other resources coming in, and we must be ready to give this. Nothing good comes just like that. There's something you have to give, whether it's time, whether it's, something. And you see, we have to be willing to do that, or else we're just going to stay like that. Oh, that bomber. Now those ones are too lazy. They don't go to school. They don't go beyond this stage of education. Or those ones, those ones are even too lazy to even think of maintaining the beautiful house they built or the beautiful compound they have. They're too lazy to even maintain something good that they have. So laziness can also be a pattern that, guys, you don't want to go by that. You don't want to be known by that, and so on. And maybe in a short bit, just after this short commercial break, I'm gonna also look at some of the reasons we find ourselves just staying in these repeated patterns, however unhealthy they are. So don't go too far. Back in a moment. Welcome back, guys. So now some of the reasons as to why we find ourselves staying in these patterns, unhealthy patterns, and kind of just finding our comfortable place in them, in it, and not wanting to make that effort to actually change or move or, better ourselves. It could be things such as, just familiarity. Sometimes we become too familiar with the space we are in until it's like, why do I have to move? Why do I have to try something else? Why do I even have to go through that, trouble to try and see if I can better it? Familiarity can be a good thing, but also can equally be a very dangerous thing. Even the Bible tells us, by the way, that familiarity can easily create contempt if we're not very careful. Sometimes we become too familiar with people until we forget the respect line. We forget the boundaries. We forget when to draw the line from being respectful and official, for lack of a better word, and cracking jokes or pulling some, just being too casual for everybody's comfort and so on. So familiarity, and sometimes just that familiarity also, however uncomfortable it might be, since we have become familiar with that space for a while, it kind of just becomes comfortable until it's like anything else is a bother, and haven't we seen this even sometimes in our workplaces? I'm too familiar with my routine in my workplace for a while until I don't even put in an effort to even try other jobs, try other things, try taking advantage of that online course to better myself, whether it's in the same line of work or something else. It's just like I'm too familiar with my routine, my 8 to 5, Monday to Friday job. It's like, why do I need to try something else? Watch Ngoji, and so on. So familiarity can be a reason as to why we stay in our repeated patterns that are not very healthy. Another reason could be fear. I'm just afraid. What if I make a fool of myself? What if it doesn't work? What if it costs me more than I can afford? And so on. But you know what, guys? What if it works? What if it ends up being the best thing you tried out? How would you know if you don't try? So let fear not be what stands between your probably next better space and where you are at the moment, just because you're so afraid. And you see, again, fear can become comfortable if you're not very careful, and can become almost the automatic justification for you not trying, for you not wanting to do this, for you not wanting to put in an effort, because I'm afraid. You know what? We all qualify to be afraid. But hello, if all of us chose to stay in the fear space, some of us could not be where we are right now. Some of us could not have dared, to leave our comfortable space, to probably leave home and try some spaces out there, see what happens there as we learn different cultures, as we learn different work etiquettes and so on, as we also just grow ourselves in more than one way. So fear. How about you be very intentional in 2023 on working on your fear? And like I said earlier in the year, how about you actually give yourselves like just short-term targets? How about you try to walk above your fear weekly? Then when a week ends, you see how you've done, celebrate yourself. Now tell yourself, I'm going to make sure fear stays out of my way for the month. And then move in so that then you do not have to bombard yourself with, I'm going to walk with no fear or enough fear for the whole year. No. Give yourself small targets and just look back and celebrate the small milestones you've made as you move on. Because guys, fear is not healthy. And it will be so sad if you will sit back and when taking notes on how your year has gone, for you to be looking at it and thinking, you know what, fear stood in my way. So there we go, guys. Fear could be another reason as to why we really are fighting with the patterns that we could do better without. Another reason as to why also we find it difficult breaking some of the patterns is because we are not admitting, we're not being honest with ourselves that we need help. Now, some patterns are really hard to break, and really it needs a team, where a team here could be a family, could be, you know, people surrounding you that are for you. And sometimes some of these patterns actually might need help from a professional point, from a professional place. And therefore, you being open and willing to actually, you know, admit that you could use a hand, that you need help in dealing with some of these patterns and getting them, you know, diluted or dissolved or gotten out of your way is what you could need. So look around and see, what patterns are you struggling with that you really could do with getting them out of your way? And then number 2, ask yourself a question. Can you do this on your own? Do you need support? And if yes, what kind of support? So that if it's professional support, then look out for them, you know, look out for them. And that's why we have different platforms such as this to also just come here and tell you it's okay. These patterns are existing. Almost every person has a pattern that they need to break, that they need to stop practicing. And therefore don't think you are alone, and don't think you are any lesser just because you are struggling with a certain pattern. And I can tell you for sure, one of the patterns that we all need to break as human beings is this pattern of limiting, you know, mentally, sometimes just mentally, limiting the ability our people who struggle with disabilities have. Let me tell you, that you have to be very intentional with, and on personal grounds. We have to break that pattern of just, oh, you're struggling with a disability. You're already ruled out. It's like I've already put you out. I've already disqualified you. That's a pattern we've grown into. At least most of us have. That we really now need to be very intentional with breaking. So that when I'm looking at a human being, the person I'm seeing first is, I'm seeing Venus first as a human being. I'm seeing Naomi first as a human being. I'm seeing David first as a human being. You know, I'm seeing Jackie. I'm seeing a person first, a human being first, because guys, like they say, we all bleed red. So we are all human beings, with or without disabilities, number 1. And number 2, we all need to just, you know, to see what we can stop, what we can get on board, you know, what we can pick up as a new pattern and which one we can break. Because you know what? We are all on this journey. Okay. So yeah, I thought I needed to mention that be intentional with breaking some of these patterns that are not adding value to your life, to your family's life, to your work life, you know, and to your hustle life and so on. And you know what? It's one day at a time. In 2023, let's make it one of those things we want to be very intentional with and just work on ourselves, bettering. Thanks for your time. I will see you in my next episode where we will be looking at something else. But in the meantime, don't forget to like, share, and hit the subscribe button if you're my first timer. And for you who is my returning subscriber, asante sana. Asante means thank you in my Swahili language. And I'll see you in my next episode. Bye for now.